Up the front here you can see that we have the propeller from the Kalgoorlie Biplane. It's 95 years old. It's from the first aeroplane that was built in Western Australia. It's not very pretty, and it's knocked around quite a lot over a number of years. It hasn't been preserved properly or stored correctly. And I was hoping that we might be able to set something in motion today that could put a stop to that, and we'll do something about it. I gave a talk on the Kalgoorlie Biplane 3 years ago, and I just thought that I'd refresh your memories for those that were here at the time, or introduce you to it for those who weren't here at the time. Kalgoorlie Biplane came to the front as an idea in 1913, late 1913. It was built during 1914, and by April 1915 it had got to this stage where it was displayed in the Kalgoorlie Town Hall. They purposely left it unfinished so that people could get a good look at what went on inside of it, and they intended to finish it in Kalgoorlie out of the sight of the general public, and that would give it more appeal when they brought it back to Kalgoorlie to christen it. It was very well organised. A syndicate of 20 people raised £750 to get the project underway, and with other fundraising events in Kalgoorlie, lots more money was poured into it. Jack Gear was the man behind the project. He had a pilot licence, the only person in Western Australia with a licence at that stage, and that's a photo of him and his helpers, the immediate helpers, after they'd spent 2 weeks in Kalgoorlie working on it to get it into the air. So they flew it at Bowes Paddock, which was north of Kalgoorlie by about 2 or 3 miles, and eventually they flew it into town where the publican gave them a free meal and free beer for the afternoon. He then flew it back to Bowes Paddock, and the idea was that they would fly it to Kalgoorlie. However, they had lots of troubles. It pranged twice on the way back, and it took 6 months to get there. The propeller, which is well shown in that photograph, was made by Frank Oldfield. He made 4 propellers. They were fabricated out of Italian walnut, laminated Italian walnut. And if you take the time to look at the propeller at the front here, you'll see that he has done a marvellous job. So that's one of the 4, this propeller up the front here. I believe there's another one in a museum in Kalgoorlie. I'm not quite sure where it is, I haven't seen it. The aircraft got to Kalgoorlie eventually, and you'll see a fairly big gap between the last date and this one, 6 or so months. But it was christened at the Kalgoorlie racecourse. But by this time, the 20 people in the syndicate started to flake off, not because of lack of interest, because of World War I. And they were signing up and joining the forces. The money had dried up, and they were having a tough time in Kalgoorlie, so they thought they'd bring it to Perth to demonstrate it to the government and hopefully get some money out of the government. So they came to Perth via Northern, where they put on a display. They brought it down by train. It was displayed for the governor, the first flight on the 11th of December. It made a few more flights in following days, and then it sort of went into wraps again at Belmont Racecourse. It was there that Jack Gear decided that he would put on another display, or he's asked to put another display, on the Esplanade in Perth. So while he was preparing the aircraft at Belmont, a gentleman came up and said, "Could you take me for a ride?" He said, "I got money, and could you take me?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll take you." But he said, "I think I'd better test fly it because we're having a lot of trouble with the engine." The engine was the weakest part of it. It was a known rotary engine that had come out of a Bristol box kite from over east and had been pranged about half a dozen times. And there were cracks in the actual body of the engine itself, and it was in very, very poor state. So Gear said to this chap, "I'll take it for a test flight before I take you for a fly." So he got into the air and then thought, I'm in the air. I'm not going to risk it again. I'll head off for the Esplanade. So off he went for the Esplanade, and leaving behind this person who's prepared to pay good money. So this bloke, his name was Mike DePedro. He jumped into a car, knowing where gear had gone, sped into the Esplanade and confronted him. He said, well, here I am, I've paid my money, where's my flight? And he said, well, can't knock you back, pop in. So they went for a flight over Perth. That was the last flight of the aircraft. After that, the wings were dismantled, the engine came out. That was the killer of the whole project. The engine was totally unserviceable. So the engine came out and the propeller came off, and it was all stored at the Union Brewery in Palmerston Street, North Perth. Mr. DePedro, Mike DePedro, was the owner of or proprietor of the Alhambra bars. So he got on to Mr. Gear and said, could I have the propeller? And Mr. Gear said, well, the aeroplane's not going to fly, at least not with that engine. So the propeller's no good, and you can have it. So he took it and he put it into his hotel. So that's the last flight of the aircraft. And the propeller was given to Pedro, not Padro, and was displayed on the wall of the hotel until 1938. I'm sure he sold many beers by saying that I was the first passenger in an aircraft in Perth. I flew in the last flight of the Kalgoorlie Biplane, and that's the propeller on the wall there, and that's the propeller over there. In 1938, Mr. DePedro presented the propeller to the Royal Aero Club, and 1939 came, World War II came. The property of the Aero Club ended up in the hands of the RAF. Equipment and organisation of the RAF took over pretty well everything, but the propeller survived. And it came to light again in 1945-46. It went to Perth Airport. It came to Jandakot, and probably by that stage no one knew anything about it. The people on the staff of the Aero Club wouldn't have had a clue what it was or where it came from. Reg Adkins was fossicking around in the hangar one day, and underneath a bench in the workshop he came across this, and he said, wow, that's a historic piece of gear. Reg has a great interest in historical aviation. So he negotiated with the President as to what was going to happen to it. The President just happened to be his wife. And so they decided that it should be better protected than just living under a bench in the workshop of the Aero Club here at Jandakot. So Reg took it home, and there it stayed for 25 years. When I gave the talk on the Kalgoorlie Biplane 3 years ago, I resurrected the prop from Reg, and it's been on the Aero Club premises ever since, and nothing can be done about it. So recently I wrote to the committee and suggested that this group of people here take it on their shoulders to make a display, a glass-fronted display box to put it in. I reckon that if we contributed a small amount of money at this meeting and possibly at the next meeting, I'm thinking a gold coin, $1 or $2, as you leave the meeting today, or a little note if you feel that way inclined, we should get enough money to make a display case for it. I've made this box and it'll be on the table just inside the door there, so as you leave you can pop something in it. I reckon that we'll make $150 to $200 today, and we might make $100 or $150 next meeting. I've had a quote and someone has suggested a ballpark figure of between $300 and $400. I reckon that's within our capability. We could have gone to the Lotteries Commission and requested a grant, but I feel that we'd be better off doing it ourselves so that we can look at it and say, yes, I was part of that, I contributed. Yes, sir.
Brian, do you want to maintain it in the condition it's in or restore it?
When we get enough money, we'll think of restoring it.
If you do think about restoring it, I'd like to volunteer the services of the workshop crew at Bull Creek Museum.
Yeah. Well, since they're volunteers and it's a very active group, thank you for that. And I think that we could probably make a donation to them. Just as you make a donation to
Very acceptable.
this organisation, we can do the same there. So it may be an ongoing thing. Between now and Christmas, we might hit $1 or $2 into the box. It'll go to a good cause. So that's Reg with the propeller, which was in his tender care for 25 years. It was in better care when it was with him than it has been with the Aero Club over the last 3. So we really should do something about it. What stands out about it is it's not particularly pretty. And what I said to the committee is that we will make the container to put it in, the glass-fronted container, and the committee will have the option of putting it somewhere in the club. They'll have the final decision as to where it goes. They may say, it looks awful, we don't care, put it in the library, put it in the hangar. But at least if it's in a good container with a glass front and a caption in it to let us know where it all came from, we'd be doing the right thing.
You want to make the container big enough for Rich to stay inside it and hold it?
Yeah, so that's the story of the propeller, and I think we could do wonders with it.
Just one question, it has to be almost 100 years old, or is it?
95 years old this year.
Was built in then?
The propeller was fashioned in 14 probably. It flew in 1915. That particular propeller has flown in Kalgoorlie, in Northern and in Perth. Yeah. That means the Aero Club has got the 2 most historic propellers in Western Australia. That one up there is off a Bristol Tourer, which Norman Brearley flew on the first airmail contract in Australia.